never been able to let it go. It was like screaming into the void. When we were investigating the Dr. Phil show, some of the most damning things that we had were the stories of the horrible treatment of guests on the show. What people were saying was so uniform. We knew we had to reach out to the Dr. Phil show to get their comment. We spoke to their head of professional affairs. We said that they'd done nothing wrong. Dr. McGraw has a very strong sense of trying not to exploit people. We said, well, do you have a responsibility to treat people medically when you bring them here? And he said, of course not. It's a television show. We went back to them with a list of very specific questions. Todd saying someone had left vodka in his dressing room. In the responses that we received, we heard that, in fact, Todd was medically supervised the entire time he was involved with tapings of Dr. Phil. We said, okay, so how did Todd get so drunk? And then they came back to us, again, saying that what they actually meant was that 100% of guests agreeing to treatment get medical supervision. So sort of like these shifting explanations for how these things were allowed to happen. It was like they had never been asked this question before. To us, it felt like that's question number one, and they couldn't figure out what to say. It did make us feel like they were hiding something.
After being on the show, I realized that this was a man who is bringing on vulnerable people and exploiting them. You know, I want people to understand that, like, this is harmful.
I was mad. I was so mad. When he brings out this book.
I wrote this book about people like you.
I feel like they were like, oh, this is a bad thing that happened to you, but let's go ahead and just promote something else.
People still look at Dr. Phil from the outside like he's just this great man and this great doctor. But I kind of feel played. They take people's stories and they make money off of it.
I would say the Dr. Phil show was a bit of a lie. Now, the Dr. Phil image is sort of down-home country boy, but they lived in 90210 on a compound with a tennis court. They ate in Beverly Hills every day. I think the Dr. Phil show was a way to enrich Dr. Phil and his family. It didn't really matter how, as long as it got the ratings they wanted, so he could make the deals with CBS to get the money. If the big bucks weren't there, he's not there. It wasn't until I was out of it that I could really see it for what it was.
Talk me through when you watched back your episode of the show.
I haven't seen the whole episode. I refuse.
When I arrived at the studio on the day of the filming, I was tense. Our son, DJ, was 23. He had been diagnosed with bipolar 1 schizoaffective disorder. I can tell you that David and I had exhausted every single solitary option for DJ's care. He needed to be in an inpatient treatment program that was going to cost out of pocket about $10,000 a month. And so it was not doable. So we had him live with us. And we seemed to be sailing until, through a violent episode, DJ left home. Now he's gone. He's missing. And we don't know where he is. We can't find him. Dr. Phil's team found and contacted our son. And they let us know he had agreed to be on the show.
We understand the exploitive nature of that type of show. It's on TV. Its goal is to make money. We were just overwhelmed and feeling hopeless. And so in that condition, we were prepared to make that sacrifice.
when Dr. Phil had DJ on stage, if you go back and see the episode, it's clear. DJ was in a full-on schizophrenic episode.
Look at these jeans right here. I designed these in real life. Look at this jacket right here. Not only did I design it, y'all tell me, would you buy this jacket? I'm asking y'all. Look. Let's keep it real.
You know, DJ, he was delusional. So he was talking about having $700 million in the bank and dating Rihanna and all that. And Dr. Phil was stoking that.
Are you engaged?
I mean, you know what I'm saying? Everybody thinks that I live in this fantasy land, and everybody thinks that, I am a, pretender. But the fact of the matter is, right, I would like to think that if I'm not engaged, I am in love with a beautiful woman that I believe loves me back unconditionally, and I am ready to receive the love that she has to offer me, right?
So are you engaged?
It felt like, I want to be sure this boy has an episode on my show. And then Dr. Phil, he almost did a commercial on set. These are our affiliates, one of the best facilities in the state of California. Creative Care in Malibu.
These are folks that I've worked with for 10, 15 years. They're from a place called Creative Care in Malibu.
Dr. Phil said his care would be fully provided for. And he said, we're going to go talk to him, and if he's willing, that's where he's going to go.
I'm going to let you go with Dr. Kaligi and
let's do it.
Dr. Mannion, and y'all go backstage and talk about this, and we'll get
Cool.
Let's get it on.
All right, cool. Okay.
Once DJ agreed to go into care, there was a feeling of relief, but that was the start of the nightmare.
When I first started watching the Dr. Phil show and all of these segments with the sort of plug for the treatment facility, it was just obvious advertising.
These people do great work. Their links are on my website.
The show has a predictable arc where you go from seeing the person at their worst, and Dr. Phil sort of passes judgment, and then he says, I'm going to send you to the best addiction treatment facility in the country. There are tons of treatment centers linked to the show. Aspen Educational Group, Origins, Turnabout Ranch, Creative Care, and an enormous number of others. Our original tipster was like, he must be profiting off that somehow. And we wondered the same thing. You can't recommend treatment programs because they paid you, rather than because you think the facility is in the best interest of the patient. We didn't have any evidence Phil was getting paid, but I felt incredibly suspicious. These are places that hold lives in their hands. If you recommend a bad place, the outcome could literally be death. I could never have predicted how terrible it would become.
Effects are upper.
After we walked off that stage, the next authority was Anthony Haskins for us.
Anthony, he was sort of the host. Like, he was always dressed up like he was going to go on stage.
You're going to talk to Anthony Haskins. He's our resource director, has been for 15 years. He will handpick and put this together.
Anthony was like the aftercare person. I was told that he was in a band with one of Dr. Phil's sons, and Dr. Phil just gave him the job.
He gave off a very star vibe. He was part of the family. So he was just sort of like the gum under your shoe. He just keeps turning up.
He would just go straight into the guest room after the show, decide if they did need aftercare of some sort. He didn't have any background in therapy. There was really no experience that would warrant him being that person.
Anthony Haskins sold Creative Care to us. He seemed more connected. He said it was like the Disneyland of therapy. And he would be well taken care of there for 2 years. We were like, he's gonna get treated perfect. It can't get better.
It seemed like our time on the Dr. Phil show was very much worth it. For about 2.5 weeks.
Okay. Thank you.
name is Wendy McEntyre, and I'm a public safety advocate. And I'm the person that is called when your child gets sent to a rehab and they come home in a body bag.
Do you want to tell us any more about why you came into this line of work? You don't have to.
No, that's all right, that's all right. My son Jared died in 2004 at a sober living home called the Safe House, ironically. And it killed me. So the reason I got involved in this was really to find purpose in my own pain, to figure out what the happened. I've become the Aaron Brockovich of the treatment industry. So if you are holding yourself out as this great place, but you're killing people, I'll be coming for you. In early 2019, I was contacted by a gangle of neighbors. They were complaining about the fact that this very family-oriented cul-de-sac was invaded by a particular facility, Creative Care. Creative Care held themselves out as the premier facility for not only drug treatment, but for mental health. And I realized that, of course, it was a Dr. Phil preferred facility. I told the neighbors, get cameras, film it all. I was watching things that made me hit my bullshit button. There were coroner vans pulling up to these places that Phil recommends. You should be sending people to places where people are dying. Period, the end. Now, that time, I posted on Facebook directly to Dr. Phil and said, you know, Dr. Phil, shame on you. Stop sending people to this place. And I got so many ex-clients and so many ex-employees of Creative Care contacting me going, yes, you're right. And they shared with me the reality of that place.
In 4 months, there's been 2 deaths at a house that has no supervision. The reason I'm scared is that we have people constantly using, leaving, relapsing, dying.
There was a woman there with me that was like insanely sick. And she wasn't treated, in my opinion, adequately. It's really hard to retain ethical staff when you're not being ethical.
And they told me how Dr. Phil integrated into that facility in a big way. And it blew my mind. They told me that there was a direct connection with Anthony Haskins.
The thing is, though, that they're paying Anthony.
No.
Yeah.
Anthony would come and he would put on some presentation to educate the staff, which is how he facilitated his payment in cash.
So he comes and does a group and they give him cash.
He gets cash for the group? Why would he get cash? When I heard in cash, that concerned me.
Here's how Creative Care operates. Anthony, they keep them on the payroll, right? They're kept away from clients. They don't have access to any clinical notes. They have no idea what's going on. They're just paying them as a consultant to make sure that the Dr. Phil referrals keep rolling in.
Pronamel, clinical enamel strength, can help us. Your mother.
They're gonna love it.
All that.
So them DJs on the street, we had no idea where he was. The police pick him up.
He was walking around on the freeway. My son walked from Malibu to downtown. It could have cost my son his life. He was taken to jail and was sentenced to the mental health ward, and then he was medicated.
What were the reasons that Creative Care gave for kicking him out?
His behavior was basically disturbing to other residents.
This conversation, which literally is the more, even saying it now, it just seems unbelievable.
He was in jail 4 months for sure. And it was then that I started working overtime on trying to figure out how we could get him back, because the only way the judge was going to let him out is if he went back to treatment. I would call the producers from the show, and I was demanding that they follow through and do what it is that you told me that you would do.
And then the condition came from Creative Care. We will possibly take him back if he's willing to get an injection of his medication that will last for an entire month. But we had to buy the injection as well. In desperity,
we said whatever it takes. He went back to Creative Care, but he was only there like 3 days. And then they called and said that he can't stay. He can't stay anymore, and we needed to come get him now because he was saying inappropriate things. I went off. Is it that Dr. Phil's not paying for this? Because they started talking to me about how much it was costing to feed him, and we can't do this, and he's inappropriate with. And I said, well, this is what you do. What is the problem? At that point, it is clear to me that whatever arrangements you've made with the Dr. Phil show, you're not really prepared to do what you promised. I felt like, oh, wait, this whole thing was a facade.
What makes it hard to tolerate is that you knew his condition and you brought him here anyway. You made the deal with this facility. It's your responsibility to check it out and make sure that it's above board.
In 1997, my mom sent me to a place called Kids of North Jersey. The kids were being physically, psychologically, emotionally, sometimes sexually abused. After I got out, I learned it was a nationwide epidemic. In other places, kids were actually dying. I felt the responsibility to get the word out because now I was on the outside.
Good morning. Thank you everyone for being here today. My name is Nick Gallia.
I've spoken in Washington, D.C.
There are thousands of kids at this very moment that are being exploited.
And then I heard that Dr. Phil was sending kids to abusive programs on his show. I saw this video.
Is your teen out of control? The Aspen Education Group can help you get that teen back on track. Now, Aspen's nationwide network of programs has been featured on my show for years, and they can help your family too.
And I think up to that point, there were 6 deaths there. I thought, surely Dr. Phil wouldn't be sending kids off to be abused. Surely he doesn't know about what's really going on. I thought it could be really effective if we had a conversation about things that are going on that he's not aware of. I contacted the producers, and they were interested in having me as a guest on the show. So I thought it was going to be this healthy discussion. I essentially figured out that I was on there for marketing. He was using me to say the place they were in is bad, and the places I recommend are properly vetted.
I'm going to tell you what we do to vet the programs that we use to refer people to from our show. Because there are good ones out there, but like every barrel, there are some bad apples.
And so it was at that point that I was like, wait a minute, I need to speak up here.
You recommended those guys right there in one of the places.
You can't make broad sweeping statements like that. That's reckless to say. You got into a bad organization where the entire philosophy was one of abuse, correct?
Absolutely. But some of the programs that you recommended on the show.
I disagree. Listen, be very careful about what you say, because when you say that about programs that have been properly vetted and you make defamatory statements that you can't support, you will be held accountable for that. So I'm just telling you that. Okay, well, okay, then you're forewarned.
Be very careful about what you say. You will be held accountable. And if you watched the version that aired, this was all cut out. Like if it was someone who really cared, you would think they would be like, tell me more about this because I'm concerned. But instead, it was be careful what you say. I looked him in the eye and I presented him things that he should be concerned about. So he can't say he didn't know.
An enormous problem in the world of treatment in America is that there's not really anybody who's doing a particularly good job of overseeing these facilities. So Dr. Phil can say whatever he wants. He can say it's good. He can say it's bad. He can say it's the best thing I ever saw in my whole entire life. And I think the majority of people could believe that if he kept the people who might say otherwise from speaking at all. I had a lot of phone calls where I would get in touch with someone who'd been a producer on the show, but then I would try to call them back to do a real interview, and they would just ghost me. People were terrified, and it wasn't a theoretical fear. Like, Dr. Phil did sue people. This is the Leah Rothman case file in California State Court and Civil Court. Leah Rothman was a longtime producer. She left the show and sued, alleging false imprisonment, intentional infliction of emotional distress, whistleblower retaliation, and it talks in particular about this meeting where she and a whole bunch of people, she says 300, who work on the Dr. Phil show were put in a single room, and Dr. Phil entered the room and demanded the doors be locked.
One of the most intense experiences at Dr. Phil, my manager had texted me, hey, can you come into the office? There's a meeting that we all need to attend to. Dr. Phil walks in and he says, I have security guards at every door. Nobody leaves. I want to know who did it. You have 10 minutes to come forward. With me, with you.
Someone on staff had gotten an interview and they had tried to sell it to the Daily Mail. He has a deal with the Daily Mail. And so he knew who had leaked it. The point was to put the fear of God into everyone else, that we are already one step ahead of you.
There's no holding Dr. Phil accountable. He knew the power that he had.
Leah Rothman, she had made some kind of recording of something that happened with Dr. Phil. And Dr. Phil's production company sued her for copyright infringement in federal court. That seemed like they were making an example of Leah Rothman. It was a warning. Everyone you talk to, without exception, whether they were a guest on the show, whether they worked on the show, they were terrified that talking to us was going to get them in trouble. But then we found one person inside the show who felt conflicted. And that one person became our most valuable source.
Hold this for a second. Thanks. This March.
And our source told us there was this new product being featured on the show called the Dr. Phil Path to Recovery.
I have actually created a virtual reality tool, Dr. Phil's Path to Recovery.
A person with addiction puts on the 3D goggles, and there, inside the 3D goggles, is Dr. Phil.
I've put them in a bar situation. So while they're in rehab, they're sitting talking to me in a bar. Now they're sitting, and this is actually in my backyard.
Our source told us that Path to Recovery was being marketed as a way to get onto the Dr. Phil show. We did a deep dive, and one of the facilities that had purchased Path to Recovery was a place called Inspirations. Even a cursory look at this facility makes you think, this doesn't seem like a very good facility. a 2-year period, they called police 180 times to report that kids were going missing from their facility, which is staggering. At the same time, the Dr. Phil show was touting them as the nation's leading addiction treatment center. We felt like Inspirations was getting marketing from the Dr. Phil show, not because they were a good facility, but because they had purchased Path to Recovery. And then we were able to review a marketing call from somebody who was selling the Path to Recovery system. They said explicitly, if you purchase Path to Recovery, then you have the chance to be on the show. Our job is to get your phones to ring and the admissions hopefully follow. That shouldn't be your job. We discovered the company that produces the Dr. Phil show and the company that makes Path to Recovery are separate companies. Addiction treatment facilities pay the Path to Recovery people, and the Dr. Phil show, it gives them the opportunity to be on the show to receive marketing. So it's not a straight line from A to B. It's very hard to follow the money, but you know the money is going somewhere.
So after several months of campaigning against Creative Care and supplying documentation, eventually the state did realize that they were in fact doing harm and finally suspended their license in December of 2019. I immediately contacted the Dr. Phil show to make sure that they were aware that they didn't have a license. But by mid-January, I realized that the referrals continued and that there was still clients being referred to Creative Care by Dr. Phil's show. I contacted Dr. Phil's attorneys. Why are you referring people to a place that's not licensed? This is what Anthony's doing. I hear it's being paid in cash. When I was told by the attorneys that Phil was shocked and outraged and couldn't believe it, I found it very hard to believe that he was unaware that there were problems there. And then they said a year prior, Phil had warned Anthony, you're not allowed to go in to any facilities and do a dog and pony show for money. So when he found out that he was continuing to do that, he was mad. And so they fired him. I think Phil relies heavily on his people. But if there's a problem, you cut it out. You know, there is plausible deniability. Over the years, I realized that when it comes right down to it, it's not about the best place, it's the relationship.
Finally, after probably over maybe 10 to 12 years, our son, now he's in a full service program, doing pretty good right now, so. But every time I'm flipping through channels on my TV and I look at the guy and I see Dr. Phil's name, I almost want to throw something at my TV screen. I can't take it.
I have an optimistic nature, and that opened my son up to this horrible experience. And for that, I have regret. But these are the most fragile minds in the world. And you exploited them for the ratings. And my son is a victim of that. Why can't these people be stopped?
The moment I wake up.
Before he was Dr. Phil, he was Phil McGraw, manager of the Grecian Health Spa. which had been selling these pretty expensive for the time memberships. They were like $150 to $700 memberships. They're advertising these memberships in the newspaper, and they suddenly shut the doors and just vanished. They called it a membership scam. That kind of behavior, selling expensive spa memberships to a spa that suddenly ceases to exist, looks an awful lot like selling Shape Up. This weight loss supplement that he was marketing, 22 pills that you take every day, depending on whether you're apple-shaped or pear-shaped. And lo and behold, a few years later, he had to pay a $10.5 million settlement to people who had purchased Shape Up because it didn't do anything.
I've never thought I'd get sued for vitamins.
But he is. Talk show giant Dr. Phil McGraw, the subject of a class action lawsuit, which claims the TV host knowingly deceived consumers.
Dr. Phil settled, but denied everything. There's this feeling that you can have when you're doing an investigation. It's like this fear that lives at the back of your mind that like somehow you're incorrect about everything. But it was like every step we took in this investigation, we were like 100 times more certain that we were right. It's just a pattern of behavior. And it's all like in the healthcare world, right? It's like a spa or diet pills or whatever the next thing is. That's sort of the through line. Preying on people's desire to be the best version of themselves. We felt really good about the story. We knew our reporting was solid. We knew we could back it up. So we were sort of all systems go. We had reached out to the Dr. Phil show to get their comment about the horrible treatment of guests on the show. We also asked the Dr. Phil show if they were recommending shoddy treatment centers because those treatment centers purchased Path to Recovery. The responses that we received from Dr. Phil's lawyers were very aggressive, pushing back against every single claim that we were making. You know, the Dr. Phil show said 100% appearances on our show are not linked to the purchase of Path to Recovery. But the guy selling Path to Recovery says, yeah, if you buy Path to Recovery, you can come on the show. And bad facilities were getting marketing from the Dr. Phil show because they had purchased Path to Recovery. They told us they had many guests that they had had on the show who'd been helped by their treatment programs, and that for a lot of people, it wasn't effective for one reason or another. You know, they left or they relapsed. They also said that it relies on state licensing boards to qualify both practitioners and facilities. But I know, and anybody who knows anything about addiction treatment facilities knows, that simply being licensed does not mean you are good. So we had the article written. I felt so 100% behind that story. Like, no matter what happened, it was the right decision. And then it was time to publish it.
Phil McGraw, better known as Dr. Phil, has made a career of rescuing addicts on television. But a recent report by Boston Globe paints a very different picture.
It was all over all media.
Former guests on Dr. Phil's show are now claiming he hurt their recovery.
Boston Globe published this report alleging that the show's staff enabled their drug addiction or alcohol addiction.
To me, that's deeply problematic.
We had basically split our big reporting into two stories published on back-to-back days. We were getting calls from other media outlets. People wanted to interview us.
Just to be clear, McGraw himself refused to speak to you, right?
Correct. We started getting phone calls. Now, people knew there was someone you could complain to, and it was us. But, like, this was the tip of the iceberg.
The staff at Dr. Phil claim that none of this is true. They are denying all of it.
My reporting partner and I and our editors were excited about the next story. We were getting tips like faster than we could record them. I was still sort of thinking of him as like daytime TV quasi joke. I don't know. Even up to the last minute, maybe I was underestimating him.
You get more of what you value, like at the Comfort Inn.
We got this letter from Dr. Phil's attorney demanding a retraction, just saying the whole story was wrong and we needed to take it all back. We were ready, like that's part of the fight. And we were right. You gotta be right. You can get sued all day long if you're right. But they included something I've never seen before, a letter to the owner of the Boston Globe. This letter said, if we sue you, it's going to be really expensive. It was a pretty clear financial threat. This was the only time in my career this ever happened. But, the Globe told us there was no appetite for a legal fight. And so, that was it. The project got shut down. It goes beyond shocked. The Boston Globe isn't supposed to get scared off by a legal threat. It bothers me. I mean, the single biggest regret I have in my whole career is not finishing the Dr. Phil investigation. I haven't been able to let it go. Money buys silence. That's true for producers, that's true for guests, it's true for reporters.
(2019 to 2020). I was a page at Paramount Pictures. The first show they put you on was Dr. Phil. The environment there was so bad, people are not aware. There is a dark side, but we were told, don't say anything. But then I was contacted by BuzzFeed to see if I would be willing to come on record. I think in the entire article, I am the only person that let them use my name.
In the wake of our reporting, there have been other very critical articles of Dr. Phil. You sort of started to see a bit of a sea change.
I think people had kind of a real change in their perception, and it was like, oh, I guess it has been this kind of exploitative for a while.
With more and more speaking out every day, it's going to become hard to ignore.
This is part one of my series explaining why you should hate Dr. Phil too.
So many people are put in compromising situations so that he can make a point or make.
Dr. Phil gave up his license to practice psychology in 2006.
The trouble was that the bad buzz was getting to the advertisers. Stories about him being terrible to work for, becoming, louder and louder, and what happened to some of his guests were getting harder to ignore, so it went out with a whimper.
Well, after 21 years on the air, Dr. Phil announcing yesterday that his daytime show is coming to an end. McGraw sharing in a statement, while I'm moving on from daytime, there is so much more I wish to do.
I guess I'm just hopeful that people will have a real idea about Dr. Phil and not the image that he'd managed to project for 25-something years.
The mentality of the show set up Americans to believe that the marginalized are sort of pushed aside, not needed. You're broken, I'm fixed. That's not what psychology is.
Over a decade of hell for us is just an episode number for Dr. Phil.
It's nothing but exploitation and ratings for him, period.
The damage that he did, it didn't go away. If you ruin someone's life, that has a ripple effect. Millions and millions of people for more than a decade made him the #1 show on TV. So, what does that say about us? Whether it's Me Too, whether it's how we treated Britney Spears, we were like collectively wrong about that. And I feel like the Dr. Phil show is overdue for that kind of reckoning.
It's all on Merritt Street. Come hang out on our street.
You don't have to take my word for it. Pick an episode with a teenage girl on it. Just watch it and just think about it. And just try to imagine, like, if you saw someone in that state, what would you do?